Stop that music. Stop the weeping. Look at him. Look at Charles. His face is not red with grief, but with a fury that turns his skin the color of a bruised plum. He is gripping the edge of my mahogany casket so hard his knuckles are white, shaking the very bed where I am supposed to be resting in eternal peace. The scent of lilies and stale church incense is choking the air, but all I can hear is his voice cracking, echoing off the stained glass windows. He grabs my cold, stiff left hand, the hand he held only when it was convenient for him, and he pulls it up, closer to his failing eyes. He squints at the gold band on my finger, the one I insisted, with my dying breath, remain on me. He reads the inscription inside the band, the inscription I memorized with my tongue and my heart 1,000 times over the last 60 years. To my eternal love, Robert, 1963. Charles lets out a sound that is half roar, half animal wail. "That is not my ring!" he screams, spitting the words onto my pale face. "That is not the ring I bought you!" He looks at the congregation, at our children, at the priest who has stopped mid-prayer. He points a trembling finger at my corpse. "She is wearing another man's ring! She is taking a lie to the grave!" The silence that follows is heavier than the dirt they are waiting to shovel onto me. But wait, how did we get to this moment? How does a faithful wife of 45 years end up causing a scandal at her own funeral? Why would I risk my soul's peace for a piece of gold? Let me tell you. Let me take you back to the silence of the bedroom, before the shouting, before the end. It started with the coughing, of course, but the real story started with the silence in the house. It was a rainy Tuesday, 3 weeks before I died. The rain was tapping against the window pane like a nervous lover trying to get in. I was sitting in my armchair, the velvet worn smooth under my elbows. The smell of camphor and old medicine was already settling into the curtains. I knew my time was short. You know when the clock is winding down, you feel the cold starting in your toes and working its way up. Charles was sitting across from me, reading the newspaper. He always held the paper up high, like a wall of newsprint between us, just as it had been for decades. I looked at him, at the gray hair that used to be brown, at the frown lines edged by years of complaining about the soup being too cold or the house being too warm. He was my husband. I had washed his clothes, cooked his meals, raised his children, and warmed his bed. But he did not know me. He knew the version of me that served tea at 4 o'clock. He did not know the woman who sat in the armchair with a secret burning a hole in her chest. I moved my hand to my neckline. Beneath the high collar of my wool blouse, hanging on a thin, frayed silver chain, rested the ring. It was warm from my skin. For 60 years, that metal had touched my heartbeat every day, every single day, while Charles talked about the stock market or the leaky faucet. Robert's ring was there, pressing against my sternum, a silent promise. "Charles," I said. My voice was weak, scratchy, like dry leaves. He didn't lower the paper. "What is it, Mary? The doctor said you need to rest your voice." "I need to talk about the arrangements," I said. He sighed, a loud, impatient exhale that rustled the pages. "We have discussed this. The plot is paid for. The service is arranged." Don't be morbid. It wasn't morbidity. It was necessity. I needed to ensure the one thing that mattered to me would happen. I reached into my blouse and pulled the chain out. The ring dangled there, catching the dim light of the lamp. A simple gold band with a small, perfect diamond. Not the gaudy rock Charles had bought me to show off to his business partners. This was modest, This was real. I unclasped the chain with trembling fingers. My arthritis made it difficult, a struggle of bone against metal, but I managed. I held the ring in my palm. It felt heavy, heavier than the house, heavier than the marriage. "Charles," I said again, louder this time. He finally lowered the paper, peering over his reading glasses. "What are you fiddling with?" "I need you to promise me something," I said. I curled my fingers over the ring, hiding it. He looked at the clock. "Is it time for your pills? You get confused when you miss the dosage." "I am not confused," I snapped, a spark of the old fire returning. I stared at him, really stared at him. I saw the indifference in his eyes. He wasn't sad that I was dying. He was inconvenienced. He was worried about who would iron his shirts and who would remember to send birthday cards to his sister. That realization gave me the courage I needed. It hardened my heart just enough. I called for our daughter, Sarah. She was in the kitchen, making tea, the clinking of the spoon against the china sounding like a bell. She came in, wiping her hands on a towel, her face drawn and tired. She was the only one who had an inkling, though she never asked. She had seen me clutching the necklace over the years. She knew there was a weight there. "Mom, do you need water?" Sarah asked, coming to my side and ignoring her father. I took Sarah's hand and pressed the ring into it. Her eyes widened as she felt the cold metal. She looked down, then at me, then at her father, who had gone back to reading about the local elections. "Sarah," I whispered, leaning close so Charles wouldn't hear the specifics, "when the time comes, when they dress me—" "Mom, don't!" She started to cry. "Listen to me," I hissed, gripping her wrist with a strength I didn't know I had left. "This ring, it must be on my finger. My left hand. You understand? Not the one in the jewelry box. This one." Sarah opened her hand slightly, catching a glimpse of the inscription. She saw the date, 1963. She did the math in her head. She looked at me with a question that could shatter the world. "Dad," she whispered. "Your father is a practical man," I said, loud enough for Charles to hear the tone, but not the words. "He won't mind which jewelry I wear. He never notices what I wear anyway." That was true. Charles hadn't complimented a dress or noticed a haircut since 1975. Charles lowered the paper again. "What are you two whispering about?" "If it's about the coffin lining, I told you, satin is too expensive. We are going with the standard silk." I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were full of tears, but she nodded. She closed her fist over Robert's ring. It was a pact, a conspiracy of women against the blindest of men. I looked back at Charles. "It doesn't matter, Charles," I said, leaning back into the cushions, feeling the exhaustion pull me down like a tide. "Just make sure I look pretty." He huffed. "You always look fine." And he went back to his paper. That night, the pain was worse. I lay in the dark, listening to Charles snore in the other bed. We had slept in separate beds for 20 years. I closed my eyes and I didn't see the ceiling. I saw a park bench in 1963. I smelled rain on pavement, not medicine. I felt a hand that was worn and calloused, not smooth and distant. I felt Robert placing that ring on my finger, his eyes full of a terrifying, beautiful love. "Promise me," he had said. "Promise me that no matter what happens, you are mine." I couldn't marry him. My parents wouldn't allow it. He was poor, a mechanic with grease under his nails. Charles was a banker, a good match, a safe future. I was sold for safety. I broke Robert's heart, and he left town, but not before I took the ring and swore I would wear it when we met again. He died 2 years later in an accident. I married Charles. I lived the lie. But the ring was the truth. As I lay there dying, I knew this was my last act of rebellion. I would not go into the dark eternity as Charles's property. I would go as Robert's bride. It was a selfish thing, perhaps, a cruel thing to leave for the living to sort out. But when you are 80 years old, and you have lived 60 of those years making coffee for a man who doesn't look at you, you realize that you owe yourself one final moment of honesty. Sarah kept her word. When the undertaker came, when the house was full of hushed voices and black clothes, she must have slipped it on my finger. She must have slid Robert's ring onto my cold hand, covering the pale mark where Charles's diamond had sat for decades. And now, here we are. The church is freezing, the organ has stopped, Charles is screaming. He feels the betrayal like a knife in his gut. He thinks it is about the ring. He thinks it is about the gold. He doesn't understand that it is about the 60 years of silence. He is screaming at a corpse, demanding answers from lips that are sewn shut. He pulls at the ring, trying to yank it off my finger, but my hands are swollen in death. It won't budge. I am holding onto it. Even in death, I am stubborn. Who is Robert? He howls, turning to the stunned guests. Who the hell is Robert? I wish I could sit up. I wish I could smooth my dress, look him in the eye, and say, Robert was the man who looked at me, Charles. He was the man who saw me. But I cannot speak. I can only let the ring speak for me. The scandal is spreading through the pews like a wildfire. I can hear the whispers, the gasps. The perfect wife, the perfect mother, with a stranger's name wrapped around her finger. It is the first time in my life I have been the center of attention, truly, and all I had to do was die. The screaming in the church fades. Charles's angry red face dissolves into the gray mist of a November afternoon 60 years ago. The smell of stale lilies and death is replaced by the scent of wet pavement, autumn leaves, and the heavy, sweet odor of engine grease and cheap tobacco. I am not 80 years old in a mahogany box anymore. I am 20. My waist is small, my hair is thick and dark like roasted coffee beans, and my heart is beating so fast I think it might crack my ribs open. It was a Tuesday in 1963. I remember the day because the world felt gray, but inside Robert's beat-up Ford, it was the only place that felt like color existed. We were parked down by the river, hidden behind the weeping willows that dipped their long branches into the muddy water. The heater in the car was broken, but I didn't feel the cold. I never felt cold when Robert was near me. Robert. Even now, just thinking his name makes my spirit tremble. He wasn't like Charles. He didn't wear pressed suits or talk about dividends. He wore flannel shirts that had been washed so many times they were soft as butter, and his hands were always stained with the work he did. He was a mechanic. He fixed things. He tried so hard to fix us. He turned to me in the front seat, the vinyl squeaking beneath us. His eyes were the color of warm honey, and they were red-rimmed. He knew. He knew before I even opened my mouth that I had come to say goodbye. "Tell me you didn't say yes to him, Elena," Robert said. His voice was rough, like gravel crunching under tires. He reached out and took my hands. His palms were calloused, rough against my skin, scratches and scars mapping out a life of hard labor. But his touch was so gentle, like he was holding a wounded bird. I looked down at our joined hands. My fingernails were painted a pale pink, perfect and pristine, just the way my mother liked them. His were dark with oil that no soap could scrub away. That was the problem, wasn't it? The oil and the polish, they didn't mix. "My father," I started, but my voice broke. I had to swallow the lump in my throat that tasted like bile and regret. "My father says Charles has a future. He says love doesn't pay the rent, Robert. He says I need security. Security. Robert spat the word out like it was poison. He let go of my hands and slammed his fist against the steering wheel. The car shook. Is that what you want? To be a bird in a gilded cage? Charles doesn't look at you, Elena. I've seen him. He looks at you like you're an accessory, like a new watch. He does love me, in his own way, I lied. It was the first of a million lies I would tell over the next 60 years. Robert looked at me, a long, searching look that stripped away all my defenses. He reached into his pocket. The sound of him rummaging through his jacket was the only sound in the world. The rain had started to fall, tapping against the roof of the car, sealing us in. He pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't new. The velvet was worn at the corners. He opened it, and there it was. The ring. My ring. The gold wasn't flashy, and the diamond was small, nothing compared to the rock Charles had already picked out from the catalog. But this ring had a soul. I could feel it radiating heat. I worked double shifts for 6 months, Robert whispered. He took the ring out and held it up to the fading light coming through the windshield. Read it. I leaned in, my eyes blurring with tears I couldn't hold back anymore. Inside the band, in tiny, engraved letters, it said, "To my eternal love, Robert, 1963. I sobbed. It was an ugly sound, a gasp of pure pain. Robert, I can't. If I take this home, my father will throw me out. He's already arranged the engagement party with Charles's family. The invitations are printed. It's done." "Then don't wear it at home," Robert said fiercely. He grabbed my left hand. His grip was desperate. "Wear it here. Wear it in your heart. But take it, please, Elena. If you leave me today, if you walk out of this car and marry that banker, I need to know that a part of you is still mine. Promise me." I looked at his face. He was crying too, silent tears tracking through the smudge of grease on his cheek. This man loved me with a fire that Charles couldn't even imagine. Charles loved order. Robert loved me. I nodded. I couldn't speak. I held out my trembling hand. Robert slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. It felt like it had always been there, like my finger had grown around it. He brought my hand to his lips and kissed the gold, then he kissed my palm, and finally, he kissed me. It was a kiss of desperation, of goodbye, salt tears mixing with the taste of rain and sorrow. "Promise me," he whispered against my lips, "you are my eternal love. No matter who you wake up next to, this ring is the truth. I promise," I choked out. I took the ring off before I got out of the car. I saw the light die in his eyes when I did it, but I clutched it in my fist so hard it cut into my palm. I put it in my pocket. I opened the car door and stepped out into the cold rain. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I had looked back, I never would have left. I walked up the driveway to my parents' house, where the lights were warm and yellow, and everything was safe and dead. That night, I hid the ring inside the hem of my winter coat. Later, I moved it to a small box inside my sewing kit. Then, finally, on a chain around my neck, hidden under layers of wool and silence. 2 years later, Robert was gone. A car accident on the interstate. They said he was driving too fast in the rain. I always wondered if he was trying to outrun the memory of me. When I heard the news, I was pregnant with Sarah. Charles was at work. I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower so no one would hear me scream, and I fell to the floor. I clutched the ring through my blouse until my chest bruised. Charles came home that night and complained that dinner was 10 minutes late. He didn't see my swollen eyes. He didn't see that the light inside me had gone out. He just wanted his roast beef. That was the beginning of the secret. For 60 years, that ring burned against my skin. Every time Charles ignored me, every time he belittled my opinions, every time he forgot our anniversary, I would press my hand against my chest and feel the outline of Robert's promise. It was my rebellion. It was my survival. I remember one Christmas, 10 years into the marriage. We were hosting a party for Charles's colleagues. The house was full of laughter that felt fake. I felt like a doll. I went into the kitchen to get more ice, and I suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. I reached under the silk neckline and pulled out the ring. Just for a second, I needed to see it. I needed to remember that I was real. Suddenly, Sarah, just a little girl then, walked in. "Mommy?" she asked. I shoved the ring back down instantly, my heart hammered. "Just fixing my necklace, sweetie," I said, my voice shaking. She looked at me with those big, knowing eyes. "You look sad, Mommy." "I'm just tired," I said. "Go play." I was always just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was lonely. I was married to a man who lived in the same house, but on a different planet. Charles and I built a life of bricks and mortar, but Robert and I had built a cathedral of longing that no one could see. And now, looking down from wherever I am, seeing Charles trying to rip that ring off my dead finger, I feel a strange sense of victory. He is shouting about the scandal, he is shouting about the humiliation, but he still doesn't ask why. He doesn't ask who Robert was. He only cares that his property has been stamped with another man's name. The priest is trying to calm him down. Father Michael, a young man who doesn't know anything about life, is putting a hand on Charles's shoulder. "Mr. Thompson, please, out of respect for the dead." "Respect?" Charles roars, his voice breaking. "She made a fool of me. 60 years. She wore this thing." Sarah steps forward. My brave Sarah. She is the only one who isn't looking at Charles with pity or horror. She is looking at him with anger. She steps between him and my casket. "Stop it, Dad," she says. Her voice is low, but it cuts through the church like a whip. "Move, Sarah," Charles snarls. "I want that ring off her finger." "No," Sarah says. She places her hand over mine, over Robert's ring. She wanted it there. "She was senile. She didn't know what she was saying," Charles yells. "She knew exactly what she was saying," Sarah counters. Her eyes are filled with tears, but her chin is high, just like mine used to be before I learned to lower it. "She told me, Dad. She told me it was the only thing she truly owned." The church goes silent, the kind of silence that hurts your ears. Charles stares at his daughter, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. The truth hangs in the air, heavy and undeniable. The ring isn't just a piece of metal anymore. It is a confession. It is a testimony. I watch Charles's face change. The anger flickers, and for a split second, I see something else. Fear. The terrifying realization that he slept beside a stranger for half a century. The realization that while he was busy making money and keeping up appearances, I was living a whole other life inside my head, a life where he didn't exist. He looks down at my hand again, at the ring that refuses to come off. The gold catches the candlelight. It shines brighter than the expensive diamond he gave me, the one that sits in the velvet box on my dresser at home, cold and unworn. "Who was he?" Charles whispers, the fight draining out of him. He sounds old now, really old. Sarah looks at me, sleeping in the satin. She touches my cheek. "He was the one who loved her, Dad," she says softly. The words hang there, And suddenly, the memory of the rain on the car roof in 1963 feels more real than the stone walls of the church. I am back in the Ford. Robert is kissing my hand. The promise is kept. I told him I would be his eternal love. And I am. Charles has my body. He has the funeral. He has the house. But Robert? Robert has my hand, and he has my story. Sarah's voice echoes in the cavernous silence of St. Jude's, bouncing off the stained glass saints who look down on us with indifferent, painted eyes. He was the one who loved her, Dad. It is a sentence that dismantles 60 years of carefully constructed architecture. I watch Charles from my vantage point, this strange, suspended place between the velvet of the coffin and the ceiling. He looks smaller than I have ever seen him. He is shrinking inside his expensive charcoal suit, the fabric sagging where his shoulders used to hold up the world. He stares at Sarah, his mouth slightly open, a line of saliva gathering at the corner. It is a pathetic sight. This is Charles Thompson, the man who could silence a boardroom with a clearing of his throat, the man who decided which loans were granted and which families lost their homes. Now he looks like a child who has been struck across the face by an invisible hand. "Love?" he croaks. The word sounds foreign on his tongue, like he is trying to speak a language he hasn't heard since childhood. I loved her. I gave her everything. Look at this. Look at this funeral. Look at the flowers. He gestures wildly at the arrangements of white lilies and roses that suffocate the altar. They cost a fortune. I know they did. I saw the invoice on the desk before I died. He chose the most expensive package, not because he loved lilies. I hated lilies. They smell like funeral parlors, even when they are fresh, but because it was what people of our standing did. "You gave her things, Dad," Sarah says, her voice trembling but her posture rigid. "You gave her a house. You gave her a car. You gave her a checking account." Robert gave her a reason to breathe. A gasp ripples through the pews. Mrs. Higgins, 3 rows back, presses a handkerchief to her mouth. I want to laugh. I want to laugh so hard my ribs ache. But I don't have ribs anymore, just the memory of them. Mrs. Higgins, who judged me for my meatloaf recipe, is now witnessing the dismantling of the town's most respectable marriage. It is delicious. It is terrible. Charles turns back to me. He grips the edge of the casket, his knuckles white. He looks at my face, really looks at me for the first time in decades. But he isn't seeing Elena. He is seeing the stranger who lived in his house. He is looking at the lips that kissed him goodnight and wondering whose name was on them. The church fades. The scent of incense turns into the smell of roast chicken and floor wax. The high ceilings lower into the crown molding of our dining room on Elm Street. It is 1985. The silver candlesticks are polished to a mirror shine. The napkins are folded into swans. It is our 22nd anniversary. Charles sits at the head of the table. He is chewing. That is the soundtrack of my marriage. The wet, rhythmic sound of Charles chewing, followed by the swallow, followed by the clink of silverware on china. "This roast is a bit dry, Elena," he says, not looking up from his plate. I am sitting at the other end of the long mahogany table. The distance between us feels like an ocean. I am wearing a pearl necklace, the one he gave me 5 years prior, but underneath the silk of my blouse, taped against my skin where he never touches, is the ring. The metal is warm. It is the only thing that feels alive in this room. "I'm sorry, Charles," I say. "I must have left it in the oven a minute too long." He sighs, a heavy, martyred sigh. It's fine. I'm just saying, for next time. He wipes his mouth and picks up his wine glass. He looks at the calendar on the wall, then back at his food. He has forgotten. It is October 14th, and he has forgotten. Again. I reach up and touch my chest, pressing hard enough to feel the sharp edge of the diamond setting through the fabric. It hurts. I need it to hurt. The pain reminds me that I exist. "Happy anniversary, Charles," I whisper. He stops chewing. He looks up, his eyes blank. "Oh, is that today?" "Yes." "Well," he says, reaching for the salt, "we can go to the club on Friday. I have a meeting tonight anyway. Did you pick up my dry cleaning?" I stare at him. The silence in the room is so loud it rings in my ears. I look at this man, this practical, successful, empty man. I wonder what would happen if I stood up and screamed. I wonder what would happen if I ripped open my blouse and showed him the ring, showed him the inscription, showed him that while he was married to his job, I was married to a ghost. "I did," I say instead. "They are hanging in your closet." "Good," he says, and he goes back to his roast beef. That night, while he slept, snoring the sleep of the self-righteous, I went into the bathroom. I locked the door. I took the ring off the tape and slid it onto my finger. I sat on the cold tile floor, weeping silently, holding my hand up to the moonlight streaming through the frosted window. "Robert," I whispered to the empty air. "Happy anniversary." I imagined him there. I imagined he hadn't died on that highway. I imagined he had come back for me, storming into this sterile house with his grease-stained hands and his heart full of fire. I imagined him pulling me out of that house, away from the dry roast beef and the silent dinners. But imagination is a cruel comfort. I eventually took the ring off, hid it back in its secret place, and went back to bed beside a man who didn't know the color of my soul. The memory dissolves, swirling away into the drafty air of the church. I am back in the coffin. Charles is shaking. He is shaking the casket. "Damn you!" he screams. The sound is raw, ugly. It cracks the polite atmosphere of the funeral into jagged pieces. "Damn you, Elena! How could you?" "Dad, stop!" Sarah grabs his arm, trying to pull him away. "Get off me!" He shoves her back, stumbling. He looks at the congregation, his eyes wild. "You all think I'm the fool, don't you? You think I didn't know something was wrong?" He turns back to me, leaning over my face, his breath smelling of mints and coffee. "I knew," he whispers, his voice dropping to a hiss that only the front row can hear. "I knew you weren't all there. I knew part of you was missing. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought I had to work harder, buy a bigger house, buy better clothes." He starts to cry. It is a terrifying sound, a high-pitched keening that doesn't belong in a man of his stature. "I worked myself to death for you," he sobs, pounding his fist feebly on the wood of the casket, inches from my shoulder. "I gave you a life, and you were sleeping with a corpse." He reaches for my hand again. He is desperate now. He needs to remove the evidence. He needs to take the ring off and throw it across the church, to sever the connection between me and the man who stole his wife without ever stepping foot in his house. He claws at my cold, stiff fingers. The friction pulls at my skin. It is violent and grotesque. Father Michael steps in, signaling the pallbearers. "Mr. Thompson, please, we must proceed." "No!" Charles yells, clinging to my hand. "It's mine! She's mine!" But he can't get it off. Robert made sure of that. The ring is too small now, my knuckles swollen with age and death. It is fused to me. We are one entity now, the secret and the flesh. The pallbearers, 4 young men from the funeral home who look terrified gently pry Charles away. He collapses into Sarah's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He looks broken, a building demolished by a wrecking ball of truth. As they drag him back to the pew, he looks at me one last time. The anger is gone, replaced by a desolation so vast it feels like a physical weight in the room. "Who was he?" he mouths the words. And for a moment, I feel a pang of pity. Not love, never love, but pity. Because Charles is right. He spent his life trying to buy a heart that was already sold. He built a fortress around a woman who was already gone. He is the victim of his own blindness, yes, but also the victim of my silence. The organ starts up again. A somber, vibrating chord that shakes the floorboards. The pallbearers step forward to close the lid. I see the heavy mahogany descending. The last thing I see is Sarah, holding her father upright, her face wet with tears, her hand clutching her own heart, and Charles, his head in his hands, defeated. The lid clicks shut. Darkness. Absolute, total darkness. But I am not afraid. In the dark, the ring on my finger feels like a lantern. I am not alone in this box. Robert is here. I can smell the rain. I can smell the autumn leaves of 1963. The silence of the grave is not empty. It is waiting. The coffin is lifted. I feel the sway as we move down the aisle. I am leaving Charles behind. I am leaving the house, the swans made of napkins, the dry roast beef, the lonely nights. I am being carried out into the world, and for the first time in 60 years, I am wearing my engagement ring in public. I am a bride again. The movement stops. I hear the heavy doors of the church creak open. The cold air of the cemetery hits the wood of the box. But then, a sound that stops my heart if it were beating. Wait! It is Charles. His voice is muffled by the wood, but it is clear. Stop the procession! I feel the coffin jolt as the bearers stop. What now? What more can he do? Does he want to break my finger to get the ring? Does he want to bury me naked? I hear footsteps running on the gravel. Heavy, frantic footsteps. Then his hands are on the casket again. I can hear him breathing hard, right against the wood near my head. "Open it," he demands. "Sir, we cannot." "Open it! I need to give her something." There is a pause, a murmur of confusion. Then the sound of the latches being undone. Light floods back in. The November sky is gray and heavy, just like the day Robert left. Charles is leaning over me. His face is red, his eyes swollen. He looks down at my hands, at Robert's ring. He reaches into his pocket. His hand is shaking so badly he almost drops what he is holding. It is his ring, the big diamond, the one I left on the dresser. He holds it up. He looks at Robert's simple gold band on my finger, then at his own flashy diamond. He looks at my face, searching for a sign, an absolution I cannot give. "Fine," he whispers, his voice breaking. "Keep him." He places his diamond ring not on my finger, but in my palm, curling my cold fingers over it. "But take this too," he says, tears dripping onto my dress. "You owe me that, Elena. You took my life. You took my name. Take the damn ring." He leans down and kisses my forehead. His lips are cold. "Goodbye, stranger." He signals the men. "Close it." The darkness returns. I am holding 2 rings now. One on my finger, a promise of eternal love. One in my palm, a receipt for a life of comfort and regret. I hold them both, the love and the lie. I suppose they are both heavy in their own way. And as the hearse engine starts, vibrating through my bones, I realize that this is the truth of marriage. It is never just one thing. It is the rain and the roof. It is the fire and the bill for the wood. I am ready to go. I wonder if Robert is waiting at the gate, or if I have to drive to the river to find him. I hope he likes the dress. I hope he doesn't mind that I'm bringing baggage. Sarah's voice echoed in the high vaulted ceiling of the church, bouncing off the stained glass saints who looked down on us with indifferent, painted eyes. He was the one who loved her, Dad. It was a sentence that dismantled 60 years of carefully constructed architecture in 5 seconds. I watched Charles from my vantage point, this strange, suspended place between the velvet of the coffin and the cold air of the sanctuary. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He was shrinking inside his expensive charcoal suit, the fabric sagging where his shoulders used to hold up the world. He stared at Sarah, his mouth slightly open, a line of saliva gathering at the corner. It was a pathetic sight. This was Charles Thompson, the man who could silence a boardroom with a clearing of his throat, the man who decided which loans were granted and which families lost their homes. Now, he looked like a child who had been struck across the face by an invisible hand. "Love?" he croaked. The word sounded foreign on his tongue, like he was trying to speak a language he hadn't heard since childhood. "I loved her. I gave her everything. Look at this. Look at this funeral. Look at the flowers." He gestured wildly at the arrangements of white lilies and roses that suffocated the altar. They cost a fortune. I knew they did. I saw the invoice on the desk before my heart finally stopped. He chose the most expensive package, not because he loved lilies. I actually hated lilies. They smell like formaldehyde, even when they are fresh. But because it was what people of our standing did. It was the package for the platinum wife. "You gave her things, Dad," Sarah said, her voice trembling but her posture rigid. "You gave her a house on the hill, you gave her a Lincoln town car, you gave her a joint checking account. Robert gave her a reason to breathe." A gasp rippled through the pews like a cold wind. Mrs. Higgins, 3 rows back, pressed a lace handkerchief to her mouth. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to laugh so hard my chest ached, but I didn't have a chest anymore, just the memory of one. Mrs. Higgins, who judged me for my meatloaf recipe for 30 years, was now witnessing the complete dismantling of the town's most respectable marriage. It was delicious. It was terrible. Charles turned back to me. He gripped the edge of the casket, his knuckles turning the color of old bone. He looked at my face, really looked at me, for the first time in decades. But he wasn't seeing Elena, his dutiful wife. He was seeing the stranger who lived in his house. He was looking at the lips that kissed him goodnight and wondering whose name was on them. The church faded for a moment. The scent of incense turned into the smell of roast chicken and floor wax. The high ceilings lowered into the crown molding of our dining room on Elm Street. It was 1985. The silver candlesticks were polished to a mirror shine. The napkins were folded into swans. It was our 22nd anniversary. Charles sat at the head of the table. He was chewing. That was the soundtrack of my marriage. The wet, rhythmic sound of Charles chewing, followed by the swallow, followed by the clink of silverware on china. "This roast is a bit dry, Elena," he said, not looking up from his plate. I was sitting at the other end of the long mahogany table. The distance between us felt like an ocean. I was wearing a pearl necklace, the one he gave me 5 years prior because his secretary reminded him to. But underneath the silk of my blouse, taped against my skin where he never touched, was the ring. The metal was warm. It was the only thing that felt alive in this room. "I am sorry, Charles," I said. "I must have left it in the oven a minute too long." He sighed, a heavy, martyred sigh. "It is fine. I am just saying, for next time." He wiped his mouth and picked up his wineglass. He looked at the calendar on the wall, then back at his food. He had forgotten. It was October 14th, and he had forgotten. Again. I reached up and touched my chest, pressing hard enough to feel the sharp edge of the diamond setting through the fabric. It hurt. I needed it to hurt. The pain reminded me that I existed. "Happy anniversary, Charles," I whispered. He stopped chewing. He looked up, his eyes blank. "Oh, is that today?" "Yes." "Well," he said, reaching for the salt, "we can go to the club on Friday. I have a meeting tonight anyway. Did you pick up my dry cleaning?" I stared at him. The silence in the room was so loud it rang in my ears. I looked at this man, this practical, successful, empty man. I wondered what would happen if I stood up and screamed. I wondered what would happen if I ripped open my blouse and showed him the ring, showed him the inscription, showed him that while he was married to his job, I was married to a ghost. "I did," I said instead. "They are hanging in your closet." "Good," he said, and he went back to his roast beef. That night, while he slept, snoring the sleep of the self-righteous, I went into the bathroom. I locked the door. I took the ring off the tape and slid it onto my finger. I sat on the cold tile floor, weeping silently, holding my hand up to the moonlight streaming through the frosted window. "Robert," I whispered to the empty air. "Happy anniversary." I imagined him there. I imagined he hadn't died on that highway. I imagined he had come back for me, storming into this sterile house with his grease-stained hands and his heart full of fire. The memory dissolved, swirling away into the drafty air of the church. I was back in the coffin. Charles was shaking. He was shaking the casket with both hands. "Damn you!" he screamed. The sound was raw, ugly. It cracked the polite atmosphere of the funeral into jagged pieces. "Damn you, Elena! How could you?" "Dad, stop!" Sarah grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away. "Get off me!" He shoved her back, stumbling. He looked at the congregation, his eyes wild. "You all think I am the fool, don't you? You think I didn't know something was wrong?" He turned back to me, leaning over my face, his breath smelling of mints and coffee. "I knew," he whispered, his voice dropping to a hiss that only the front row could hear. "I knew you weren't all there. I knew part of you was missing. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought I had to work harder, buy a bigger house, buy better clothes." He started to cry. It was a terrifying sound, a high-pitched keening that didn't belong in a man of his stature. "I worked myself to death for you," he sobbed, pounding his fist feebly on the wood of the casket, inches from my shoulder. "I gave you a life, and you were sleeping with a corpse." He reached for my hand again. He was desperate now. He needed to remove the evidence. He needed to take the ring off and throw it across the church, to sever the connection between me and the man who stole his wife without ever stepping foot in his house. He clawed at my cold, stiff fingers. The friction pulled at my skin. It was violent and grotesque. Father Michael stepped in, signaling the pallbearers. "Mr. Thompson, please, we must proceed." "No!" Charles yelled, clinging to my hand. "It is mine. She is mine." But he couldn't get it off. Robert made sure of that. The ring was too small now, my knuckles swollen with age and death. It was fused to me. We were one entity now, the secret and the flesh. The pallbearers, 4 young men from the funeral home who looked terrified gently pried Charles away. He collapsed into Sarah's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He looked broken. A building demolished by a wrecking ball of truth. As they dragged him back to the pew, he looked at me one last time. The anger was gone, replaced by a desolation so vast it felt like a physical weight in the room. "Who was he?" he mouthed the words. And for a moment, I felt a pang of pity. Not love, never love, but pity. Because Charles was right. He spent his life trying to buy a heart that was already sold. He built a fortress around a woman who was already gone. He was the victim of his own blindness, yes, but also the victim of my silence. The organ started up again, a somber, vibrating chord that shook the floorboards. The pallbearers stepped forward to close the lid. I saw the heavy mahogany descending. The last thing I saw was Sarah, holding her father upright, her face wet with tears, her hand clutching her own heart, and Charles, his head in his hands, defeated. The lid clicked shut. Darkness. Absolute, total darkness. But I was not afraid. In the dark, the ring on my finger felt like a lantern. I was not alone in this box. Robert was here. I could smell the rain. I could smell the autumn leaves of 1963. The silence of the grave was not empty. It was waiting. The coffin was lifted. I felt the sway as we moved down the aisle. I was leaving Charles behind. I was leaving the house. The swans made of napkins, the dry roast beef, the lonely nights. I was being carried out into the world. And for the first time in 60 years, I was wearing my engagement ring in public. I was a bride again. The movement stopped. I heard the heavy doors of the church creak open. The cold air of the cemetery hit the wood of the box. But then, a sound that stopped my heart, if it were beating. Wait, it was Charles. His voice was muffled by the wood, but it was clear. "Stop the procession!" I felt the coffin jolt as the bearer stopped. What now? What more could he do? Did he want to break my finger to get the ring? Did he want to bury me naked? I heard footsteps running on the gravel, heavy, frantic footsteps. Then his hands were on the casket again. I could hear him breathing hard, right against the wood near my head. "Open it!" he demanded. "Sir, we cannot." "Open it! I need to!" I need to give her something. There was a pause, a murmur of confusion. Then the sound of the latches being undone. Light flooded back in. The November sky was gray and heavy, just like the day Robert left. Charles was leaning over me. His face was red, his eyes swollen. He looked down at my hands, at Robert's ring. He reached into his pocket. His hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped what he was holding. It was his ring, the big diamond, the one I left on the dresser, the symbol of the good match. He held it up. He looked at Robert's simple gold band on my finger, then at his own flashy diamond. He looked at my face, searching for a sign, an absolution I could not give. "Fine," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Keep him." He placed his diamond ring not on my finger, but in my palm, curling my cold fingers over it. "But take this, too," he said, tears dripping onto my dress. "You owe me that, Elena. You took my life. You took my name. Take the damn ring." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. His lips were cold. "Goodbye, stranger." He signaled the men. "Close it." The darkness returned. I was holding 2 rings now. One on my finger, a promise of eternal love. One in my palm, a receipt for a life of comfort and regret. I held them both, the love and the lie. I suppose they are both heavy in their own way. And as the hearse engine started, vibrating through my bones, I realized that this is the truth of marriage. It is never just one thing. It is the rain and the roof. It is the fire and the bill for the wood. The hearse moves with a smooth, silent dignity that feels entirely artificial. I can feel the road beneath us, the turns, the slight deceleration as we navigate the winding paths of the cemetery. I am alone in the back, yet I have never felt more crowded. I have Charles's grief heavy in my left hand, a cold, hard stone that cost him 3 months' salary. And on my finger, I have Robert's promise, a thin band of gold that cost him everything. We stop. The engine cuts out. The silence that follows is thick, heavy, like a wool blanket. I hear the doors open, the muffled voices of the men. They are respectful, hushed, doing their job. I wonder if they know they are carrying a woman who is currently committing adultery in her own coffin. I feel the lift again, the sway, then the sensation of being lowered. It is a strange feeling going down. It feels less like falling and more like being planted. I hear the creak of the ropes, the strain of the wood. Then a soft thud. I am at the bottom. I am at the end of the line. Above me, I hear the murmur of the priest. Father Michael is probably rushing. It looks like rain. I can hear the first few drops pattering against the lid of the casket. Tap, tap, tap. Then comes the sound I have dreaded and craved for 60 years. The sound of earth. It hits the wood with a dull, hollow rhythm, dust to dust. It is the sound of a door locking. I imagine Charles standing up there, perhaps throwing the first handful. Is he relieved? Is he angry? Is he already thinking about how empty the house will be tonight, or is he thinking about which secretary to hire to replace me? I hope he finds peace. I really do. I hope he finds a woman who loves lilies and dry roast beef and doesn't keep secrets taped to her chest. I hope he finds someone who can look at his diamond and feel lucky instead of bought. The sounds of the world above begin to fade. The car doors slamming, the engine of the limousine starting up, the crunch of tires on gravel. They are leaving. Sarah is going back to her children. Charles is going back to his whiskey. They are driving away into their complicated, noisy lives, leaving me here in the quiet. It gets colder. The air inside the box seems to thin out. My chest, which hasn't moved in days, feels light. The darkness presses in against my eyes, but it isn't frightening. It is soft. It is velvet. I close my eyes. I grip the diamond in my palm tight. So tight it would hurt if I could still feel pain. I keep the gold band on my finger. I am taking it all with me. I am not leaving any of it behind. When I open my eyes, the darkness is gone. I am not in a box. I am not in the cemetery. I am standing on the bank of the river. The mud is soft under my feet. I am wearing my wedding shoes, the white silk pumps, and they are sinking into the damp earth, but I don't care. The air smells sweet, like wet grass and motor oil and tobacco. The sky is a twilight purple, the color of a bruise, the color of the evening he left. The trees are rustling. The willow tree, the one where we carved our initials, is swaying in a breeze that feels warm against my skin. My skin. I look down at my hands. The liver spots are gone. The wrinkles are smoothed away. My veins don't look like blue ropes anymore. They look strong, young. I hear a sound behind me, the crunch of boots on twigs. My heart, which was silent in the casket, gives a mighty, thundering kick in my chest. Thump, 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 thump. It is the loudest sound in the world. I turn around. He is leaning against the hood of his old blue Chevy. He looks exactly the same. He is wearing the white t-shirt with the grease stain on the shoulder. His hair is slicked back, but a few strands have fallen over his forehead. He looks solid. He looks real. He doesn't look like a memory. He looks like a Tuesday. He pushes off the car and stands up straight. He puts his hands in his pockets and tilts his head to the side, giving me that crooked grin that used to make me forget my own name. "You're late, Elena," he says. His voice is deep, scratching against the air like gravel. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I feel tears pricking my eyes, hot and fast. "I took the scenic route," I say. "My voice sounds young again. It doesn't crack." He laughs. It's a short, sharp sound. "I see you did." He walks toward me. He moves with that loose, easy stride I remember, the walk of a man who owns nothing but is afraid of nothing. He stops a foot away from me. He looks at my face. He studies me, searching for the girl he left behind in the woman I became. "You look beautiful," he whispers. "You look like a movie star." I look down at my dress, the expensive funeral dress Charles bought. It feels ridiculous here, too stiff, too formal. I feel like I'm wearing a costume. "I missed you, Robert," I say. The words feel inadequate. They are too small to hold 60 years of silence. I missed you every time I poured coffee. I missed you every time I made a bed. I missed you in the supermarket. I missed you in the church. He reaches out and takes my left hand. He lifts it up. He looks at the gold band on my finger. He rubs his thumb over it, feeling the scratches, the wear and tear of a lifetime of hiding. "You kept it," he says softly. He sounds surprised. "I never took it off," I tell him. "Not really. It was always there." Then his eyes drop to my other hand, the one clenched in a fist at my side. "What do you have there?" he asks. I hesitate. I feel a flash of shame. I am standing in front of my soulmate, holding the symbol of my betrayal. But I cannot lie. Not here. Not now. I open my hand. The heavy diamond ring sits there, catching the last light of the sun. It glitters aggressively. It looks out of place in this soft, muddy world. He looks at the diamond. Then he looks at me. He doesn't look angry. He looks sad. He looks at the ring the way you look at a scar. "He gave me a life, Robert," I say, my voice trembling. "He gave me a home. He gave me a daughter. I couldn't just die with you. I had to live." Robert nods slowly. He reaches out and picks up the diamond ring from my palm. He holds it up, inspecting it. "It's a nice rock," he says. "A bit flashy for you, though. You always liked simple things." "He loved me," I say defensively, "in his own way. He tried." "I know," Robert says. He hands the ring back to me. "Keep it." I blink. "What?" "It's part of you, Elena," he says. "You lived that life. You washed those dishes. You raised that girl. You cried those tears. You earned that ring. I'm not going to ask you to throw it in the river. I'm not that jealous. Not anymore." He steps closer. He wraps his arms around me. He smells like rain and cheap cologne and everything I have ever wanted. I bury my face in his neck. I feel his heartbeat against my chest. It beats in time with mine. "I was so lonely," I whisper into his shirt. "I know," he says, stroking my hair. "I was watching. I saw you. I saw you at the window. I saw you in the garden. I was waiting." He pulls back and looks into my eyes. "But you're here now, and we have time. We have all the time there is." I look at the two rings. The gold on my finger. The diamond in my palm. The love and the life. The dream and the duty. I close my fingers over the diamond again. I won't throw it away. I will keep it in my pocket, a reminder of Charles, a reminder of the cold, clean house and the dry roast beef and the safety that felt like a cage. I will honor it because it was my life. But I will wear the gold. I take Robert's hand. His skin is warm. Where are we going? I ask. He smiles and the years melt away completely. I don't know, he says. Nowhere specific. Just driving. Do you want to drive? I laugh, a real laugh, loud and free. I haven't driven in years. Charles said my eyes were too bad. Your eyes are fine here, Robert says. He opens the passenger door of the Chevy for me. The metal creaks, a familiar, comforting sound. I slide onto the bench seat. The vinyl is cracked, and there are old candy wrappers on the floor. It is perfect. Robert gets in the driver's side. He turns the key. The engine roars to life, a rough, throaty growl that vibrates through the soles of my feet. He revs it once, looking at me. Ready? He asks. I look back toward the way I came. The shadows are gathering. Somewhere, far away, back in the world of heavy mahogany furniture and silent dinners, people are mourning. Charles is drinking his scotch. Sarah is crying. They think I am gone. They think I am in the dark. I look at Robert. I look at the road stretching out ahead of us, winding along the river, bathed in golden light. Yes, I say, I am ready. He shifts into gear. We pull away from the bank, tires spinning in the mud for a second before catching the road. We drive fast. The wind rushes through the open windows, messing up my hair, blowing away the smell of the funeral flowers. I stick my hand out the window, feeling the air rush against my palm. I open my fingers. I feel the diamond ring there, safe, but just wait. I feel the gold ring on my finger, light as air. I am 67 years old. My name is Elena. And for the first time in 60 years, I am going home.